Sure.
But yeah, it's just the obvious questions, and also if you can, I think the producer said we'd like you just to sort of set out the scene on the families at war.
Sure.
Thank you. So we'll chat to you again in just a second. Sorry to keep you.
No problem. No problem. Wait lang guys, sabi kaya habol din natin. For ano lang, for posterity lang just in case. Change costume pa tayo kaagad. Ayoko na, isara ko na tong phone ko. Ayoko na Ay. May nag-comment, makapag-asar naman to si Richard. Wagas, tawa ng tawa mo tao. Bakit? I'm just being ano lang.
Pati yung mga priest na rin, nagsasalita na. Bakit inambuso si Duterte sa Duterte na ambuso? 30,000 ang pinatay.
Naka-live ako dito once again. Huwag kang... damdam Nyamet. I-forward mo
Bakit ba'y galing to?
Salamat nga. Damat nga tao dito Si Kamat. Sutil ka man. Kasalamat nga, ano yan? Airco, yung criminal nga, aeroplano.
Avatar na lang.
Yung movie about the criminals na
Suka.
Ano nangyari? Fantastic.
Okay, Richard, are you looking into a laptop screen?
Yeah. Now, am I good? Looking at the right screen.
Yeah. Just look at the camera. Yeah.
Fantastic. Perfect. Sorry, it's my first time. I've never done this.
Okay, we'll get started then.
Sure.
I'm sure it is. Okay, Richard Haydarian. How much of a bombshell was this news of Duterte's arrest?
Well, I think the word bombshell may not be probably more of a big bang. I think bombshell is an understatement. I mean, this is highly consequential on multiple levels. I think, first of all, it's a big good news for a rules-based international order, especially in an era of Trump, where every single global institution is coming under attack. I think the ICC can finally take a big win. I mean, last time I checked, the ICC had warrants of arrest against a couple of people, including Putin, Netanyahu, leaders in Taliban, among others. I'm not sure, practically speaking, we're looking at any trial anytime soon for those individuals. So to have someone with the profile and notoriety of Duterte likely within their jurisdiction in the coming hours or days, and hopefully a trial within the coming months, probably 3 months from now or so, that would be a big win for ICC, and I think ICC really needs this at this point in time. I remember I was in Germany and having conversation with one head of state or so then, and they were telling us that they made it clear to the Philippines that they want us to comply with the ICC. On the other hand, of course, this is also big internally for the Philippines, because we're talking about at least a measure of justice, or at least a hope for justice.
Yeah,
for
Richard, before we go on to the second part of it, just in terms of, you were saying there, you think that you'll see him in The Hague potentially. Do they even have the jurisdiction to take him there? Because when Duterte was president, he withdrew, didn't he, from the ICC? So what makes them able to go over there and arrest him now?
So the Philippine Supreme Court actually had a ruling on this, saying that the ICC, at the very least, has residual jurisdiction over the crimes that were committed when the Philippines was still a member of the ICC. Before Duterte, by the way, unilaterally withdrew from the ICC without the concurrence of the Senate. So we have a system similar to the US, whereby the Senate has to ratify and also potentially concur with any withdrawal from the treaty. So at the very least, the crimes against humanity, tens of thousands of extrajudicial killings that happened between 2011, when Duterte was Davao, all the way to 2018, when he was the president, when really the intensity was high, that will automatically be covered. But let's not forget, last time I checked, was Russia a member of ICC? Is Taliban a member of ICC? I'm not sure about that. So we also have cases whereby ICC issues warrants of arrest against countries who don't even happen or never even bother to be part of the ICC.
Because President Duterte, when he was president, he sort of embraced this label as the Trump of the East, didn't he? And the thing about Donald Trump is he seemed to have a way of making all those legal worries disappear. Do you not think that Duterte will do something similar ultimately?
Well, I think that was absolutely the reason why Duterte came back. He was in Hong Kong over the weekend, and we had suspicions that maybe China was offering him an exile, kind of like what, I don't know, Russia offered to Assad not long ago, and we thought he's going to stay there, kind of a leader in exile. But he came back, and I think he came back because he thought he could pull off a kind of a Trumpian comeback. The idea that, as Waldo Emerson said, if you take, a shot at the king and don't finish the job, the king will come back with a vengeance. So I think I think Duterte was going for that, or Trump of the East was going for that, except he got outsmarted. So the Philippine authorities apparently had a plan that he was not aware of. He thought he's going to go back to the Philippines. There'll be thousands of his fans at the airport. They're going to file cases right and left, take it to the Supreme Court, and who knows, God knows if the warrant of arrest will ever be implemented. But instead, the government had different plans. So speaking of the government, is under a Marcos, right? A Ferdinand Marcos Jr., the OGs of Philippine political dynasties. Apparently, their plan was, we're not going to even allow you to get out of the airport. We're immediately going to take you to a military air base, and from there, we're just going to whisk you away. I think that was a stroke of genius, logistically and politically speaking, with some delays, some nervous moments. But legally speaking, to be honest, there's some people are saying that maybe this had to first go through local courts. A local court should have first issued warrant of arrest, and then you could have worked it from there. But last time I checked, I think ICC would be fine with having Duterte within their jurisdiction. They have been calling for this for quite some time. So maybe that argument is already moot and academic, at least legally speaking.
Because what is fascinating about this is that Duterte's daughter is the current vice president. He endorsed the current president, who now seems to have turned on him. What's happening?
Well, that's basically Machiavellian politics in the 21st century. And it was a question of who was the sharper Machiavelli when it came down to it. I mean, you guys are British, right? So this is classic Game of Thrones, right? Loyalty is shifting all the time, and one thing you're being stopped from the front or from the back. Well, the reality is that the Dutertes were the cause of the trouble. I mean, they could have actually cruised their way all the way to 2028 with Sara Duterte, the current vice president, even potentially getting Marcos' support to be his successor. But no, the Dutertes were not willing to wait. They were entitled. They pushed the envelope. They insulted the president. They called him a cocaine addict. They incited sedition. They called for even coup d'etat, separation of their hometown. My goodness, what else? And then at some point, I think Marcos Jr. just realized, okay, this is an existential crisis, and I'm going to show who's the boss here. So he eventually agreed to ICC's request for cooperation on this. I confirmed when I was at The Hague last year that there was already that communication. It looks like it was Marcos Jr. who was not still open to that possibility. But after all the attacks by Dutertes, I think for Marcos, it was a matter of who's going to strike first. And he said, I'm going to go for it.
Yeah,
and he went for it very smartly, yeah.
Bongbong Marcos Jr., used to say he wouldn't cooperate with this request. The current president seems to have changed his mind. These two warring family dynasties in the Philippines, they have history, don't they?
Absolutely, and there's a credibility gap. To be fair, I mean, you're absolutely right. You got it. Marcos 2 years ago was saying, "Oh no, ICC has no jurisdiction," and the next thing you know, oh well, maybe we'll allow their investigators to get in, and the next thing you know, oh, actually we cannot do anything if they they issue warrant of arrest. The reasonable, I would say, plausible argument they made is this: remember, the Philippines is in the midst of a territorial maritime dispute with a giant called China, right? And we have invoked international law. So some people are saying if the Philippines wants international law to be on its side, it cannot be selective. You cannot say support us on our claims in the South China Sea against China with international law, and the next thing you know, oh, but on ICC, if there's a warrant of arrest by ICC, we're going to defy it. Maybe if you're US or Trump, you can get away with that. But if you're a mid-sized country like the Philippines, which needs help, maybe you want to be careful about being too selective. Or at least that's the legal fig leaf that the government is putting forward. And that's why it's important for me what the real progressive opposition does in the Philippines, or whatever is left of it, what the victims will do. Remember in Colombia, what the case of the victims of Escobar coming out and even forming their own militia at some point, right? We don't want to go that way, civil war situation. But what I hope is the media, including you guys, including us in the Philippines, pay more attention to the stories of those victims, because we need to hear those victims. Otherwise, you correctly pointed out, Duterte's will try to pull off a Trump game whereby, oh, I'm a victim of a witch hunt. Oh, they're going after me. It's a deep state, right? It's this supposedly Western white people who are going after me, and how they're this puppet of the West, Marcos, to allow them. So that's the narrative of the Dutertes, and the Marcoses have to carefully push back against that, but they may need credibility, which will eventually and ultimately should come from grassroots level and the progressive opposition.
There were thousands of people killed in these supposedly extrajudicial killings, but at the same time, when Duterte left office, he was wildly popular, wasn't he? So for this to happen to somebody who still commands that much support, how explosive could that be now in the Philippines for him to be whisked off to The Hague?
Right. I remember, was it CNBC or something? It was about Pauls in Russia. Like 99% said they love Putin, and then 1% said, I don't want to fall off the window. I won't say it's exactly the same situation, but let's be honest, when you have 30,000 people potentially killed right and left, especially in the poorest corners of the Philippines, a part of me believes, and by the way, there are some really solid academic studies on this, that the fear factor may have had a multiplier effect. But I'm not saying Duterte is not popular. I think Duterte is popular, but not as popular as his survey suggested when he had that fear factor. In fact, his daughter only has a net 20 plus approval rating. So that means actually they're not invincible. But again, as we saw in the case of Trump, you may have a significant mobilized plurality of 20-30%, and then you can work it from there. So that is why Duterte's cannot be, you cannot underestimate there. And that's why we have to also watch what will happen next. What will the daughter do? What will the other surrogates of Duterte do who are running for the Senate? Will they be effective in coming up with a kind of a counter narrative and portray themselves as the victims of a witch hunt? And, Ferdinand Marcos, that's a name that invokes dictatorship, right? Are they going to try to show this as a kind of a dictatorial move? So this is just round one in a new chapter in Philippine politics. So you mentioned this, Game of Thrones between the Dutertes and Marcoses. I don't think we're done yet. I think we have just entered a new chapter. But, as a self-described progressive or liberal, I would say I still feel more hope today than ever before. Because I'll be honest, if only 24 hours ago someone told to me this would happen, in fact, even 4 hours ago, someone would have told this would happen, I would still have a lot of doubts, because I've seen so many times when we were almost there and then something happened, there was a plot twist. So let's hope, cross finger, this thing pushes through, and the victims, the real victims, will have more voice and will have more recognition of their suffering and their pains.
Richard Haydarian, thank you so much for speaking with us.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Richard. Just checking with my editor that he's happy. Yes, they're very happy. Thank you so much.
Oh, how dare you! If you were not happy, I would be very disappointed. It's almost midnight.
More with me than you.
This is like my 12th interview. I hope I made sense. Fantastic, and keep in touch. More than happy to talk to you guys. Good day. Fantastic.
Thanks.
Fantastic. Ayan, mga British people. British people, amazing people, wonderful people. Iba talaga mag-British, no? Iba yung accent nila, parang mayroon kang Credibility. May nag-comment sa akin, bakit Richard, pag mga nag-interview sa akin ay mga
Foreigners.
hindi, mga British especially. Biglang nagiging posh ka rin, parang Oxford boy. No, but seriously, actually maganda yung tanong na in fairness Parang akala ko noon na parang, wait lang, DDS ba to? Wait, you're not gonna help the other side. Parang yung ginagawa ko kay Ronald Llamas. I'm not done, I'm talking to the... Yung nanay ko, parang yung sidekick ni Joe Rogan. Yung biglang nagko-comment si Joe, yung videographer niya nagsusulat. I don't know guys, I promise to end this because I have to go to writing actually. Oh my God. Umaga, habol. But ito, guys. I'll tell you what. Actually, I think I ended on a perfect note kanina. An argument ko here is, ultimately guys, it also matters anong gagawin ng mga totoong opposition. Kasi kulang naman talaga sa credibility ang admin ng Marcos when it comes to human rights. And totoo yan. First, magaling host, di ba? Papalit-palit naman yan. Medyo hapyaw-hapyaw rin. So, that's why mahalaga yung sasabi ni Bam Aquino, Kiko Pangilinan, Franz Castro, I don't know. Well, Rizal Ontiveros and Akban have been absolutely clear about this. So, I'm very happy about it. So, you get what I'm saying? Last thing I want to say here, guys, is yeah, as I mentioned a while ago, this is not the end of the story. I think there's going to be a lot of plot twists. There's a lot of, well, content, quote unquote, to discuss. Kaya, sana in the meantime, guys, we can think outside the box also. Maybe not as outside the box as how they renditioned Duterte out of the... But, you know, outside the box in terms of, baka naman panahon na for a new generation of leaders to come to the Philippines. To be honest, I'm just saying. Like, you know, like, I mean, I'm okay with si ganyan. Okay, but, you know, it's time for, kaya nga sabi ko, we need our own move forward on March. You know, kind of a movement here because I think we're entering some interesting moment in Philippine politics. But, these are what you call objective conditions. What we need are also subjective moves to make the most out of these objective conditions at yun yung challenge. And what you need are energetic leader, spontaneous leader, dynamic leaders. By the way, I'm not talking about myself, just to be clear. I'm talking about like Vico Soto, whatever. But I also don't want to talk about just Vico Soto. I mean, like, napaka mediocre naman natin na isa lang masasabi natin matino na young leader. I think there are a lot of them in different fields and we have to put them together. All right? So as we speak, guys, the level of dedication I'm showing here on this show, yun ang gusto kong makita sa mga political leaders natin. Young, dynamic, medyo may budots ng konti, pero at the same time, medyo alam din niya yung pinagsasabi niya. At medyo naman pang international level rin, para social-socialin. Alright, thank you very much.